Fantastic. Okay, so I've got, oh, hold on. Okay. All right, good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lisa Shea. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I work with folks who feel trapped, disempowered, marginalized, afraid, stuck, to heal attachment wounds, substance abuse, a lot of not so easy shadow stuff, to find joy and freedom and their sovereignty and their voice, most of all, their voice and their freedom. So today I am more than thrilled to welcome you, Hyun. I'd like to welcome Hyun Martin, a friend and a colleague who has a story that I'm still sort of jaw dropped from yesterday when we spoke briefly. I am really looking forward to getting to know you better, because you are a huge shining example with the light beautifully cascading in through your windows of how we can shine so bright, having really gone through trauma, not just surviving trauma, but you are a story of truly thriving in your healing. So probably a zillion questions for you. My first, as I sat and I did my own, thank you for that grounding. That was beautiful. I did my own kind of slowing down and getting quiet before our interview. And I thought two questions that I'd love to hear from you, because I know you've been through a lot, and I don't necessarily know if you want to talk about your story, if you want to tell the viewers a little bit about your story, which we can do, because I really want to hear. My soul is always interested in, how do folks at the bottom, or many bottoms, what is it? What is it? What did you find inside of yourself? How did you survive it? How did you come up out of your bottom, or bottoms like I've had, right? Many, many of those beautiful, gorgeous moments, right? So I want to hear from you. What was it? And I'm just going to be quiet because that's such a personal, sacred experience, but I really want to hear from you what that was like.
My very first thing was, okay, I'm Hyun Martin, and I'm a transracial adoptee from South Korea, because South Korea back in the 60s, along with Holt Enterprises, decided that the best way to get hard currency was to allow these quote unwanted children, are children of that were marginalized, either single mothers or just very poor families that were abandoned. Rather than spend money on social services, they decided that they would make money and have hard currency from the US by allowing all these adoptions to happen. That's why there's such a huge adoptions of South Korean people that are in their 60s and 70s and even in their 80s. But then it went to China because it became cheaper and easier. So this is all a part of what I call colonialism and white supremacy and Christianity, like all, and patriarchy, like all of it is something that men all decided to do together to further their own missions and their own visions of saving the world.
I can feel that deeply.
So at the age of 3, I had an aunt that had married an American soldier, and she had already gone to America, and then she came back in 1960. It would have been 1965, and they were looking for a little Korean girl to adopt, and that was literally, I mean, that's what I've heard, and that's what they've told me. And the reason that they were able to do that was because they had hard currency, and they were saying that they were going to raise me with so much love and with so much more wealth than my parents could have. And unfortunately, that was not totally true. As a matter of fact, it was very untrue.
Okay.
It was really as I say, I'm a human trafficked baby. And this is the part about adoption, especially. We need to, as adoptees, really talk about the adoption narrative. Like, there is so much of, you must be so grateful that you were adopted and taken out of this poor, miserable country. And, you were saved and, you came to America and, you have God on your side and all this other stuff.
It could look like that to an outsider.
Exactly. But at the age of 4.5, which is when I first came to America, as I say to to people when I'm talking, is that at 4.5, when I first came to America, I was told I could not speak my language. So at home, we were not allowed to speak Korean, even though 3 out of the 4 of us could. And it was because of control. He did not want us to be talking without him understanding what we were saying.
Sure. Makes sense.
And
American father.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
And so I was silenced in so many ways. Think about that.
We spoke yesterday, so I'm ready. I do a lot of work with people who have survived toxic family patterns and narcissistic and sociopathy and whatnot. And I'm already hearing the unbelievable things that were asked of you.
So at 4.5, he would come and stay in my bed for about half an hour to an hour before I go to bed. At the very beginning, my brother and I, we were in a 2-bedroom trailer home. So we were in bunk beds. And so while he did it, he was not as physical as he was later. So half a year goes by, we get that was transition housing because he had just come to the States and he was in Fort Hood and Killeen. So they bought in a small town called Florence, Texas, which in 1967 was 675 people. And I say that was actually the best thing that he could have done for us, because it was this very small town. And there really is a sense of community. And even though we were strange and we were different, they allowed us to, because it's so small, we really, I felt like I belonged.
Did you feel seen?
Yes.
In some way, protectively?
Yes.
Welcomed, safe in some way?
Yes.
Interesting balance. Okay.
So it is very, very wild. So we had this, I would say 5 acres that we had. And then he had a trailer that he put on there. And then later, 2 years later, after he came back from Vietnam, in 1970, we moved to Lampasas, Texas, which was 5,575 people at the time.
Okay. So if you could give us a nutshell of the experience and then your bottom and how you came up from that. How did you come to your reckoning of understanding what you've been through? When the veils are taken from our eyes, because you've named part of what happened. Is there more that you wanted to say about that brought you to your bottom?
Yeah. So at 4.5, he comes to my bedroom. And so when we moved to Florence, like 6 months later, and we go to the smaller trailer, I have my own room.
Okay.
And if you've ever been in Texas, they have these thunderstorms and hailstorms and all kinds of weird things. And so whenever that happens, the trailer actually shakes and trembles. And I guess the other thing that I forgot to tell you is that when I was 3 years old, first adopted, dropped off at my adoptive parents' house, one of the first things they did was they put me into a military hospital to fix my eyes. So I had a week of being in a hospital, bandaged And in the because it was a
Mm.
military hospital, it was actually in English instead of Korean. So I was
Oh my
literally
goodness.
isolated for like a week with
So
bandages.
not only are you separated from your original home
Yeah.
upbringing caretakers, now you're plunked into an American hospital alone and separate.
Yes,
Double whammy. And then we're getting braced for our third whammy, which is adoptive father doing things that no child should ever be exposed to. Oh
absolutely.
my goodness. So this is complex PTSD, folks, right
Yes,
here.
that is exactly what it is. And
Mm.
it's so,
Oh boy.
so,
Yeah.
so, so hard to explain to
Mm-hmm.
people that there are many things that can happen to children. And that's what I talk about, adverse childhood experiences. And
Right.
so on an adverse childhood experience, I rate myself a 7,
Mm-hmm.
but that does not include the
Mm-hmm.
immigration, that does not include
Mm.
the medical trauma
Well,
and the
and if I may be so bold, I think it's time to update the adverse childhood
I totally agree.
experiences. I think it's time for
Well, it was a
the bar for trauma is so much lower than we ever knew.
exactly.
So yeah.
And so
Mm.
I talk about all of this, and I was at SAMHSA for severe childhood mental illness and for severe emotional disturbances only as the only stated survivor, that lived experience of this stuff.
Can you give us a little bit more of an understanding when you say you were at SAMHSA? What does that mean for you? You were a patient?
Okay. No. I wasn't a patient. I was
That's
actually
why I was curious what you're
okay. So
meaning.
the government does these policy think tank things, and so they bring in experts to
This is your
basically.
White House work. Okay. Got you. Okay. We need to hear more about you, Hyun. So with SAMHSA,
Just for a few days, just to do
for our viewers, can you just tell us what SAMHSA is? Because some folks may have no idea what that
the
is.
Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, and it is the government arm that does what I call the think tank and best policy and best practices
Right.
for people dealing with recovery and with substance abuse or with mental health.
Right. So give us just tell us very briefly what your work with them was.
It was trying to figure out a way to,
or is, if it's continuing. I don't want to be
no,
wrong here.
I will tell you that it's such, I hate to say it, that there is such an academic stigma. And if you don't have the absolute PhD or the MD behind your name,
Right.
there was only a quarter of maybe half of the people that really did like actually treat me as a colleague. But there was, I would say, and there was definitely a woman that was very, very condescending. It was so easily seen that actually a younger woman came to me and said, I think I understand how you feel because I'm the youngest in this group.
Okay. So tell us though, what was your role?
It was to speak for the children and to also talk about the family dynamics. And the biggest issue for almost all of this is the way our health system is with insurance. So when children are being abused and they are taken out, or if they are even in their family, a lot of times children will be okay with Medicaid, but adults, depending on what state you are in, may not have the coverage. So you can't really do a holistic family intervention, or even for caregivers like grandmothers or aunts or whoever takes on the child.
Sure. Okay. So let's circle back for those folks who are probably going, what the hell happened to this woman? What the hell happened to you, Queen? What happened to you? Give us a nutshell for
I will say that
the sake of time.
yes, back in the Okay, so I used to say I'm an incest survivor, and only in my 50s did I say I'm a rape survivor from the time I was 4.5.
Wow. I
I
just
was
got
sexually,
goosebumps over my whole body. Okay.
I had sexual molestation, which was, touch and other things and stimulation. And then at 9, I actually was vaginally raped.
Hmm.
So,
Yum.
and it was an ongoing thing.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yes, it was an
Wow. Thank
ongoing.
you for being so brave and telling us about this.
And so in
Your
my
courage is beyond what I can express. I'm sorry, go ahead. You were saying.
in my book, I talk about this, that it was 7.5 years that I talk about that I lived with this. And so I like calculated out the hours and minutes and all of that. And then my parents come over just before I turn 10. And then just before I turn 11, I actually go to live with my biological parents. And so since you know about the attachment disorder, then you know that I was
trying to get my head around all of this.
Assimilated. I wanted to be assimilated as an American, and then to be put back into fresh off the boat immigrant parents, and being the translator and being the adult, and later becoming the first driver at the age of 15, because in Texas, you can get a hardship license.
Okay.
So yeah,
okay.
I grew up very, very fast and
I hear
very,
that.
very highly sexualized.
Correct. Of course. Of course. Do you relate to feeling parentified?
I was the parent for both families.
Yeah.
Whether it was.
So it's, yeah. I mean, I'm hearing
adoptive or-
trauma, punch, punch, punch. So tell us.
How did I survive all of that?
How did you get here? You wrote a book. What's the name of your book? Please tell your viewers. What's the name of your book?
I Survived Childhood, a memoir of abandonment, betrayal, and healing. And I talk about this. I published it in 2017. And as I said, that was the beginning of my story. Now I'm far more willing to reveal other parts of it. But at the time, I knew I needed to get my voice out. I needed to at least start the beginning of the process of telling my story. And so I worked with the journalist so that I would not trigger too badly. However, some survivors have told me that it was such a sanitized version that it triggered them.
Interesting.
So
wow. Okay.
So it's like you can't win for losing, but at least it was my line in the sand, and I became a public speaker and writer about these subjects. And so that's how I got into all of this.
So, okay. So that's what I was curious about, is how did recovery start for you? Kind of when it's, in the shame and the dark and the shadows and the secrets, right? About what's happening. And then how did sunlight come in?
As a child, I always believed that there was something greater than just, maybe it was, I just came in with that innate sense that despite the pain, that life was worth living. And I survived by reading books. So I was an avid reader, like from the age of 5, and learning English and just becoming very, very quick at it. And then learning to basically, reading was my lifeline because I could escape, and television was another way of escaping. It was anything that allowed me to see another image, or to visualize, or to anything that allowed me to take myself out of where I was. And so I was a disembodied child. I was a very dissociated child, very sensitive, extremely sensitive. And I was made fun of because I was an Asian in the midst of Texas, and there was only 4 Asian families, two that were half, because of they were interracially married. And then that's the
Wow.
other thing that I talk about, is that when I came in 1967, Loving versus Virginia had not happened. So in many parts of the South and parts of the US, my adoptive parents' marriage was not legal.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So the second question that I have for you today, because I could talk to you and interview you for hours, clearly. We're not afforded that luxury today. However, my question would be, how do I word this? What has been your go-to? Is it traditional therapy? What has been your healing? Many folks, first of all, the bar is so low, folks are kind of waking up going, oh shoot, I've been traumatized. What do I do?
I say the biggest things is to
So
learn to
what did you
emotional
do?
regulation and somatic processing for me, and breathing. Breathing is like the quickest way to center oneself and to get
Sure.
out of the fight, flight, or freeze response back into
Sure.
what I call the frontal cortex thinking.
Back online. Yes. Yes. So did you do that did you seek all this within you and you figured it out, or did you seek
It was
support outside,
it
external
was a
support?
lot of those things. Okay, so in 1987, I broke down when I was in college in Indiana University, and
Okay.
she was a female doctor, and so thank God she listened to me crying and breaking down, and she said, you can go to the Julian Center, which is still in Indianapolis and still operational. And that was what they did. They did domestic violence. And I had a wonderful therapist. And in that first month, just from speaking my truth, I lost 20 pounds.
Wow.
It's because of the toxic shame of, yes. And so I guess the other thing to tell people is that I've lost 47 pounds in the past year.
Your journey continues. So beautiful. That's another whole interview. But
okay. Yes, when I, as I say, when I learned to let go of the burdens of protection and shame.
Right.
This is the last, right. I call this is my transformational third act. I'm 59 years old, and the love of my life has back in my life. And we were able to forgive each other for all that the parts that we played in the breakdown of our relationship.
And I'm glad you brought that up. We talked about that yesterday. That's a beautiful piece. Exquisite healing piece for you to have the blessings and the rewards and the gifts and the joy after so much thunder and lightning and tsunamis and pain. To have that bright light and rainbow. That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
So I do call myself the rainbows and unicorn, because I'm able to heal and I'm able to bring joy.
Yeah. So my last question before we wrap it up for today would be, you mentioned the breath work, which is, that's a whole interview, but you mentioned the somatic release. I work with a lot of modalities to help folks release somatically, meaning out of the body. Trauma goes into the body, gets stuck. We hold the emotion. We really need, if we're going to heal, it needs to be released from the body.
So
what are your
years as a massage therapist?
Okay.
And as an energy worker, because I'm able to feel, because I do feel the energy, yes, and all of that. So I'm able to figure out where on the body they're holding it, and allowing, I do these trigger points is what I call them. They are actually called trigger points because they trigger the pain that, radiates. So we have body armor, and I'm able to use it.
Yes. Yes. So you, in your own healing, were those the modalities of choice for you? Energy work, massage, breath work?
It was also human potential. It was all of the above. So as I say, I started with therapy. I went into human potential. And then
Yeah.
I was also starting my career as a massage therapist, and I could feel the energy. And so I went deep dive into Eastern, Western healing.
Okay. All right. So, what would you tell a viewer who is triggered listening today and feels maybe even suicidal, like nowhere to turn, no one? There's so much. When we are bogged down with that much shame, we isolate and we feel like we are just whale scum.
This is my little routine.
Talk to that viewer. What do you do?
This is my little routine. So just rub your hands together. And this is one that you can do. So get your hands nice and warm. And take off your glasses too.
I knew it. I know that.
So nice and warm, and then put it over your face and say, thank you for allowing me to face the world. Thank you for allowing me to see the world.
Allowing me to see the world.
Thank you for allowing me to perceive and intuit.
Thank you for allowing me to perceive into it.
And then bring it across your forehead so that you're getting your cerebral, the frontal cortex to work. And then just hold it at your temples and say, thank you for giving me free will choice and to be responsible. Respond in the moment, in the present moment, not from the past, not from the future, but right now. I am safe. And then go around your ears and say, thank you for allowing me to hear and listen to the world. And then just hold right here on your throat. So this is polyvagal right now. This part is polyvagal.
Yes, I was wondering. Okay.
So anyway, breathe in and let it go. Breathe in again. And let that belly pooch out like a Buddha belly, and then let it go. And anytime we slow down our breathing and exhale twice as long, we allow what I call the parasympathetic nervous system to get back online. And so that's where you can rest and relax. So the other things that I tell people is if you need to do the primal scream and it's not safe, you can just breathe in and just do and it's always so much more fun to do it with someone. You are harmonizing even though you don't realize it, and just letting that go. Both of you. So now go ahead. If we're going to do a moo, so breathe in and moo. And it really gets that palate that vibrating. And so it actually starts that bliss center, that center part of your brain. To start really getting activated. And it really can give you a high. So
moves a lot of energy.
It does. And so the next one is a lot of energy. Yes. So the next
let's do one more. Let's do the Om.
Yes. So breathe in. Om. And now we're going to do sort of a havening.
Havening, yes.
So you're going to go and say,
love this.
I'm lovable. I am loved. I am loved.
I am loved.
I matter.
I matter.
Valued. I am supported. I am safe.
I'm safe. We laugh because we're on the other side.
So
and
just
live in
hold,
joy and freedom and sovereignty. So
just
there's
hold
laughter
your
for
heart.
everyone.
Yes. Just hold your heart and that little child within you and just say, I am so thankful we have grown and survived and that we are the age that we are. So
Beautiful. All right. Wow. Thank you, Hyun. This was absolutely fabulous. How do you feel?
oh, I love teaching what I call these emotional regulatory tools. And so I'm
Yeah.
writing a book about all of this.
So, okay, I was going to say, so why don't we let's link resources and offer tools for those people who may be watching and need to click a link immediately for some quick
So the other thing that
quick
I tell
links.
people is Hoffman process is absolutely fabulous.
Okay.
Of integrating the body, the
Fabulous.
intellect,
Yes.
spiritual
Great.
self, and the emotional
Okay.
child, and growing that emotional child to the adult that you are.
Fabulous. All right. Thank you so much. This was so fabulous. Thank you, Hyun. I'm sending you a huge hug from me to you, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you more. And let's kibitz about another interview.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
love
Thank
it.
you, viewers, for watching us today. Take good care.
Bye bye.
Bye.